So this session today is on more than just self-care. It's on supportive systems. I'm going to be talking about that a lot today. So hopefully everyone's prepared for a lot of conversation around how we can support each other in a systems level, not just on an individual level. I want to also give credit to my colleagues who collaborated with me on this presentation. They unfortunately had some other pressing commitments today. My supervisor, Emily, is interviewing for a number of positions that we've worked to create to support mental health need in our schools in our area. So I'm excited about the work she's doing. I want us to walk away having accomplished these 4 things when we log off of this session today. So obviously the title, Refilling Our Cup, there are a ton of analogies about cups, right? This cup is either half full if you're an optimist or half empty if you're a pessimist, right? Or there are lots of other ways to look at it. One thing that's important is for us to keep in mind that at the end of the day, it does not matter if the cup is half full or half empty. If we're constantly carrying the cup and unable to put it down, it gets tiring. What about when we have more than one cup to carry? How many of us can relate to these poor gentlemen? Feeling completely overloaded, like we can't possibly manage all of it. At some point, something's going to drop, right? How many of us have staff that have shared that they're feeling overwhelmed or shared that they can't manage even one more thing? Sometimes that can look like pushback against implementing new programs. How many of us have seen that? Really wish I could have a show of hands, but this is not a platform where I can do that. So we know carrying too much can be stressful and can lead to burnout, which can leave us feeling empty, like we have nothing left to give, like we're completely exhausted. I'm seeing people respond in the chat box. I love the interaction. Thank you. Yes. How many of us feel this way ourselves, and how many of us have staff that have told you they feel this way? I want all of you to type in the chat box one way that you can tell that another person is spread too thin. I like to focus on other people so that no one feels like it's too personal or like they're sharing something too personal. So what's one way? Yep, a bad mood. Yeah, good, Kayla. Definitely. Sometimes people's mood, body language. Yes, sometimes even I love this. Oh, it's like a waterfall activity already. By the way, we're going to be doing some other waterfall activities today. Headaches, weepy, stressed, grumpy. Yes, I'm loving all of this. Yes, it's easy to see people getting quiet. It's easy to see when people are spread too thin, right? The content that we're going to share today is going to give us some tools to help ourselves and our staff if we're feeling overloaded, and to refill our cups if we're getting empty, because we all know that we cannot pour from an empty cup. I want to take a minute to define the problem first, and this is going to be something that all of us are pretty familiar with. All of us have some experience with our staff and with ourselves being burned out. This year has been a doozy for everybody, right? But let's define the problem. We know that chronic stress leads to burnout, which leads to turnover. This is a small qualitative study that I conducted during the course of my capstone project in my graduate program. I was interested in stress and burnout in educators or others serving our youth specifically. These are only a few of the quotes, but as you take a minute and have a look at these, you can tell that they're really highlighting the stress and burnout that our educators and others serving our students are experiencing. The one on the top left, my top left, really strikes me. This person is clearly some kind of English teacher. I love the reference to Giles Corey. Not fun content to read though, right? I was also interested in how they were managing stress on their own. If you all notice, these quotes are reflecting some pretty poor stress management strategies. The one on my right is reflecting turnover. How many of us have lost staff due to burnout? Good staff as well. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's something that everyone can relate to right now. This has been a really difficult year for everyone. Early retirement. Yeah. Yeah. I think all of us can relate to this, right? I was also curious to know not so much the types of support offered in the schools, but I was more interested in the perception of support that educators thought were available to them. And so the questions that I asked that resulted in these responses were really asking about the report that they're aware of or their perceptions of support. As you can see, a lot of these statements make it clear that our educators and others serving our students are not only feeling burned out and overburdened, but they also do not feel supported by their leadership. If you have a look at the content, there is some perception that employers don't care reflected in the statements. But all of us here today, I know we do care. And the educators that I work with on a day-to-day basis, I know they deeply care. So what I want to do today is really start addressing the disconnect there. We're going to build on something that you're all very familiar with to get us started in this. So we all know this triangle, right? It's funny, trainings that I attend that reference the multi-tiered systems of support joke a lot about not wanting to see another triangle. And I am giving you all another triangle today, but it's an important triangle, right? We know that universal school-wide programs like PBIS, prevention activities intended for the whole student body, including things like sources of strength or SAD or other student-led clubs, those are our base of the triangle. And then we have our targeted interventions for students who are showing signs of a struggle, such as small groups for skill building, SBIRT, or other brief interventions. If you will notice, I'm using a lot of mental health focused language as I'm talking through a multi-tiered system of support. We all know that multi-tiered systems of support address all types of different needs, not just mental health needs, but I tend to focus on mental health content because that's my area of expertise. I just want to acknowledge that real quick. And then we've got our intensive supports, interventions for students who need significant supports like clinical treatment services outside of school settings or services like CBITs delivered at the school by professionals that are certified to deliver those services. Andrea, I absolutely love what you said here. Leaders are also not practicing self-care and they don't have empathy to spare, right? We are all burned out, every last one of us, not just our staff. We are all feeling it, definitely. I love that. So let's apply the same concept of support to our staff. Instead of multi-tiered systems of support, we'll call it multi-tiered staff support. At the base of our triangle is our primary systems level workplace health promotion and wellness promotion programs. These are preventative policy and organizational level activities that enhance job and personal resources. Next is our secondary individual level stress management interventions that focus on restoring the resources that have been depleted from the work environment. And finally, we have our tertiary services, like referrals through an employee assistance program or counseling resources. We're going to talk about each one of these. A lot of times when we have conversations about mental health, counseling or therapy is where our minds go. That's the top of our triangle, so we'll start there and work our way backwards today. There are going to be times where we or our staff need support outside of what we can do at the organizational or individual levels. And that's where the top of this triangle comes in. It is important to a robust system of support that we have services at the top of our triangle. Something that I want the leaders in this session to think about today is how accessible is the information about employee assistance program? Is it placed in easily visible locations? What barriers are in place that might make employees reluctant to access this resource? An example of a barrier is making it so that employees have to seek a referral from HR instead of accessing the employee assistance program themselves and self-referring through it. Another barrier might be that your employee assistance program is only ever mentioned during onboarding or when someone is being referred as part of disciplinary action. That should be part of a normal conversation. Another question is, how does your office culture tend to respond to knowledge that people are seeking services? The more we normalize help seeking in policy, communication, and in actions like barrier reduction, the more likely people are to feel supported in seeking help if needed. The next tier down is our individual level strategies. So you all are pretty familiar with the chat box already. I'm already getting some great conversation going in the chat box. What I want to do now is called a waterfall activity. It's where we type our response into the chat box, but we don't hit enter until given direction to do so. And then we all hit enter at the same time. So it's this awesome cascade of all of these wonderful things. So I want you all to type in one individual level wellness practice that you or your staff participate in right now. Type it into the chat box, but don't hit enter until I tell you to. Okay, everyone, go ahead and hit enter. Let's see what everyone has. Oh, this is awesome. Who's doing walking groups at lunch? I love this. Coffee stops, yes. Wonderful, yes. Yeah, and I'm seeing some comments that some of these things aren't available to some people in the position that they're in, right? That's what this conversation is all about, is making sure that these kinds of supports are available to everyone. Lunch together, there's nothing like sharing a meal and just having a conversation, right? So individual stress management strategies are actually a tier 2 intervention, but most workplaces place the responsibility of stress management on individual employees. As you guys can see, this creates a very unbalanced triangle. Our employees are tired of hearing about self-care. How many of us as leaders are also tired of hearing the word self-care? I know I personally am very tired of it. This is because that language makes us sound like it's all on the individual to manage legitimately stressful situations. We have had unprecedented difficulty this year as a whole country and as individuals and as educators and as parents, as employees, as friends. This is like nothing we've ever experienced before. It's normal to feel stressed. But the foundational tier 1 prevention for workplace stress is actually supports built into the organization in the form of supportive policies and workplace wellness initiatives. So let's talk about the base of our triangle. So the first level of workplace wellness, tier 1, is the systems level. We're going to break this down a lot today. We're going to unpack a lot of how to build this base. Some of the elements of this are implementing or integrating workplace wellness practices into organizational policy, creating a culture of wellness, and allowing staff time for and supporting wellness activities. You all remember, just because the EAP is written into policy does not make it a tier 1 intervention, right? That's tier 3. We also need to ensure that staffing have adequate access to resources, including time. I have heard from so many educators that they don't even have time to use the restroom during the day because what's supposed to be their lunch hour is taken up with requirements like walking students to and from the lunchroom and checking emails and multiple other requirements. As educators and administrators, we are mindful that using evidence-based practices in our school buildings benefit our students. There are also best practice standards for our staff for ensuring that our workplace is a healthy environment for our staff. These are best practice standards established by the National Center for School Mental Health at the University of Maryland School of Medicine. Hopefully you all can see it relatively well. I'll also share the slides at the end of the presentation. So you'll notice that these standards include formally assessing staff well-being, just like we assess student outcomes. Let's talk about staff well-being a little more. How many of us have some sort of assessment of staff well-being, not student well-being, but staff well-being? I wish I could see a show of hands, but again, not possible on this platform. How many of us use a validated tool? If it's just a tool that's created in-house, or if it's just a word of mouth situation, that is not best practice. What kinds of changes do you make as a result of the feedback that you receive? How do you communicate the changes that were made as a result of feedback? Yeah, I'm seeing people respond, we don't have an assessment of staff well-being. Yeah, that's something that's not as common, right? Student well-being is being assessed, but staff well-being is, there's less attention paid to it right now. So after we've assessed staff well-being, what do we do to actually improve staff well-being? Are we making wellness activities part of our workday, or are they something that our educators have to give up more of their time to participate in? I always like to share best practices when I know about them, and this is one best practice that schools can actually look into to start implementing on their own if they would like. These are models of systems level educator wellness programs that we can draw from. They're out of OEA Choice Trust in Oregon. They have blueprints and frameworks for systems level approaches to wellness. Another element to staff wellness, or I guess one of the foundational elements to staff wellness, is organizational justice. A lot of people are becoming familiar with organizational justice principles. They're actually pulled from criminal justice, but they've been pulled into an education space. I love how education is looking to other professions to improve their practice. Improvement science is another really good example of this right now. It started out in healthcare, and educators are using it to improve the work that they do in an education space as well. We know all workplaces do better when there is a sense of fairness, and that includes education spaces. There are 3 elements that make up organizational justice. The first is distributive justice. Is your salary structure open knowledge? That's pretty standard in public education, but it's not standard in a lot of other fields, and many workplaces have policies that prohibit sharing your salary with your peers. Before we celebrate too much, though, about having transparent salary schedules, I want you all to think about after-hours work that our educators put in, time that they put in to prep for their classes, money that they spend on classroom supplies. Are our educators adequately reimbursed for all of these things? The next question is the next element is procedural justice. If you have written policies in place, are they in simple, clear language that is actually usable? Or is it a policy that sits on a shelf and is never actually touched? How consistently are your policies applied? Recall the comment on the earlier slide about administration not responding to a toxic workplace environment. That can actually pose legal problems for districts, right? So we want to make sure that we have clear policy and that it's applied across the board. Finally, we have interactional justice. We all have complete control over the way we personally interact with our staff. Are your interactions empowering and uplifting? We're going to discuss the practices of individual leaders in the coming slides to help kind of work on specifically those interactional justice elements. So the research tells us that the absence of these elements contribute to workplace stress, burnout, and turnover and tension. It explains that if a person perceives distributive injustice, they will look to procedural justice to explain it. And if they perceive distributive or procedural injustice, they will look to interactional justice to inform turnover and tensions. What that's telling us is that the way we interact with our staff can be the last line in turnover prevention, even if we don't have much control over policies or reimbursement decisions. So let's talk about those individual level interactional principles that we can all do something about. These are the 5 practices of exemplary leadership. The first one, model the way. Leaders model behavior that they expect, they clearly communicate their values and guiding principles, and they work to find and build on shared ideals with their staff. Think about a time that you felt like leadership was expecting things of you that they weren't willing to do themselves. How did you feel? What about a time that guidance wasn't clear? It was not clear to you what you were supposed to do or how you were supposed to do it. What was your performance like on that work? By modeling the way, we remove that ambiguity and make things clear. The next practice is inspiring a shared vision. Equity work is a really salient example of this to me right now because I have the benefit of having leadership that are strongly committed to equity. You can see how excited they are about the work that they're doing when they talk about it. The real question in this one is, do we believe in the work that we're doing, and are we communicating our confidence and investment in that belief? Enthusiasm is catching. Everyone picks up on it if you are enthusiastic about it. Challenge the process is next. Just because we've always done something one way is not an argument for keeping things the same. I'm sure we've all heard, when we know better, we do better. Just as we've identified that we need to make changes in accessibility and equity work, we also need to make changes in workplace wellness practices. The first thing that comes to mind here is acknowledging that wellness is our responsibility too, not just our employees. I want you all to think about the procedures in your school districts. Is there a reason for the way that you do things that can be easily explained? Or are they being done that way just because they've always been done that way? I do want to add a caution here though. We don't want to make changes just for change's sake. If something is serving our educators well, we don't necessarily need to make changes, but we should be assessing how well our educators are served in our current systems. The next element is enabling others to act. Are we trusting our staff to do the work that we're asking them to do? Are we demonstrating that we believe that they're capable of doing this work? Micromanaging is the exact opposite of this practice. To get extraordinary things done, leaders have to enable others to act. This means giving our staff the resources and support that they need and the autonomy to make decisions, and trusting that they're going to make really great decisions. Fostering collaboration and building trust. A sense of teamwork goes beyond direct reports to engaging all who must make the project work and all who must live with the results. Sometimes that also involves engaging students and engaging parents in coming up with solutions. This is done by soliciting input from everyone at the table and making sure that the right people are invited to the table in the first place. This is done by acknowledging others' contributions and not discounting them. When we include people and acknowledge the value of their contribution, they begin to feel strong, capable, and committed. We enable others to act not by hoarding power, but by giving it away. The last of the 5 practices is encouraging the heart. They're all important. We need to use all of them together, but this one makes me feel the best. There are a ton of little tangible things that we can do to show our staff that we value them. Things like writing personal thank you notes rather than sending an email. Making note of important events in other people's lives and following up with them directly. Recognizing people's contributions in lots of different ways, whether that's monthly newsletters full of success stories or routine recognition programs where awards and appreciation notices are given to individuals and teams for doing great work. An example of this that I like to share from my own experience is that my supervisor is phenomenal at this specific practice. She will, when she's excited about work that her employees have done, she will actually email her supervisors and brag about her employees to her supervisors. It is a wonderful little thing, a wonderful little way of acknowledging the wonderful work that people are doing in a really visible way. That's not too difficult to do. These open acknowledgments of other people's successes provide a climate in which people feel safe, seen, cared about, and genuinely appreciated by their leaders. It creates a culture of celebrating values and victories. I like kind of sitting in these spots that make us feel good for a minute. So I want to do another waterfall activity here. I want you all to type the last thing that someone did that made you feel genuinely seen and appreciated into the chat box. Okay, go ahead and hit enter. Flowers, volunteer work, personal thank you card, mailed a note. Yes, I love that. Yeah. Oh, this is wonderful. Yes, I love seeing all this. Oh, a direct phone call to tell you how appreciated you are. Yeah. So as you all are typing these things, as you all are thinking of these wonderful things and typing them, how many of us have smiles on our face? Right? Taking that minute and acknowledging someone else is something lasting that people carry with them. It is just amazing, isn't it? An important point for us to sit on here before we move from this page, though, is that this has to be genuine. This acknowledgement of other people's contributions and these expressions of appreciation have to be genuine. We can all tell when someone's being phony or when their heart isn't in it, and that feels like just going through the motions, and that's not going to improve staff morale, right? So we do have to genuinely care. Oh, I absolutely love this. Dave just put in that a parent actually made a phone call to him. That is wonderful. That is awesome. So I'm going to have us take a minute and put this work into practice. Okay. I'm going to put a link into the chat box here. And you all should be able to click that link, and it will prompt you to make a copy of this really simple document. I'm not a giant fan of things that are super complicated. Sometimes just kind of applying what we're learning in the moment helps us kind of make plans to use it. So I want you all to take a moment and brainstorm practices that you can adopt in the material that we've shared. I'm also going to switch over to the Q&A box here because I want to be able to respond to people's questions as they're brainstorming these things. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and add them to the Q&A box so I can answer them. Yeah, I love infographics too. I am a giant fan of having things be visually appealing and contain some great content. It's awesome. I encourage anyone to have a look at kind of the different resources available. Another one that I referenced was the National Center for School Mental Health. And that one is absolutely wonderful to get started on making some awesome changes too. So I wanted to do a waterfall activity here. As you guys brainstorm things that you can apply in your setting, I want you all to type into the chat, what is one thing that you can commit to doing in the first month of school that's going to improve wellness on a systems level for you? Whether that's as simple as, I'm going to make a point to write personal thank you notes or, things like that. What's something that you can do yourself to improve wellness? All right, go ahead and hit enter. I want to see what you all have. Walking group, notes and kudos, yeah. Meeting with each person, I love it. Yes, atmosphere of inclusiveness, yes, please. Yeah, I love that. I love yoga. I'm a hot yoga fan. I know that, not everyone's into that, but it works for me. Yes, Kayla, that public acknowledgement of people's accomplishments is so awesome. Yeah, clocking off, not taking work home with you. That can be really difficult, but it is good to take time for ourselves, definitely. Yeah. So I want the people that are leaders or people that advocate for change in their school districts to think about the next piece here. What can you do? What's one thing that you can do within the next month or within the first month of school to adopt a systems level workplace wellness practice or policy in your school? What can you do on a systems level? Or what can you advocate for on a systems level? Sometimes it takes advocacy before we get to make any change. All right, I absolutely love that one person wrote that they're willing to cover classes for bathroom breaks, schools definitely get very strictly scheduled, right? 4 10-hour days. Oh, Andrea, that's a thought. You know, I worked 4 10s in prior employment, and they were very long days, but it was nice to have the extra day on the weekend. All right, those of us that have been typing about systems level work, go ahead and hit enter. I want to see your thoughts. Yeah, OEA blueprint to self-evaluate, yes. Mindful moments, yes. Yeah, yeah, that's all great. All staff meetings. Mm-hmm. Are we talking about mindfulness moments at all staff meetings? Yeah. Yes, including staff voice is so, so important. Mm-hmm. Amy, I think all of us can relate to that. It can be difficult. I think that's why we need to kind of evaluate first before we just implement things. A lot of times, if we do a good validated assessment of what the needs are, then we can kind of be intentional about what we implement. Mm-hmm. Scheduled breaks in the master schedule, yes. If we have the ability to determine the bell schedule, that's super helpful. Yeah. All right. I want to take a moment and just kind of show you guys the last couple bits here, and then we actually have a minute to do an activity that I was hoping we would have time for. So I do always want to take a minute and acknowledge all of the brilliant minds that have done all the work and all the research that I'm sharing about. So if you have a minute, these are some really great leaders in their fields. I encourage everyone to look at the School Mental Health Quality Assessment through the National Center for School Mental Health. It's called the SHAPE Assessment. It's very, very helpful to have us actually start assessing what it is that we need to do in our workplace to make some awesome changes. And then this is an attribution slide. I have way too much fun with Slides Go. So if you liked the presentation template, Slides Go is awesome. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing this because I would like to give you all an activity really quick. It's another interactive activity. You should be able to click it, and then it will prompt you to make a copy. And I am going to go ahead and share the screen with the directions. Obviously, it's another cup-themed activity. That was the theme of this presentation. So I'll have you all click on that link to open the document. So there are three kind of general components to self-care. Remember, this is tier 2. Self-care is tier 2, correct? The first one is emotional, the second one is physical, and the third one is social. And we need all of these to really practice good self-care. But this is a really quick, easy exercise that we can apply to really assessing what we're doing and not doing to take care of ourselves and what's available to us. So I want you to identify at least the 3 things from each category, physical, emotional, and social, that fill your cup, that re-energize you, that recharge you. If you're currently practicing them, write them inside the cup. And if you're not currently practicing them, write them outside your cup. there should be boxes for you to just type on into. I'm going to go ahead and go back to that prior slide so you guys can all see kind of the examples again. Can someone confirm with me that they were able to open the document and that it's working well for them? Okay, awesome. Thank you all so much. It's always fun in an environment where I can't really see people. Yes, Eric, it would be very tough on a phone or a iPad or anything like that. That's very, very true. Accessibility can be difficult when you're not kind of thinking about all the different devices people can be using. It's really hard to plan for all of them. I'm lucky. I have a setup with 3 different monitors so that I can organize things really easily. All right, so you guys have had a minute to fill out pieces in your cup. So now I want to ask you to do 2 different things. First, we're going to do a waterfall activity. I want you all to tell me one thing that you could begin doing now to improve your self-care. Okay, go ahead and hit enter. Oh, I love it. The intentional sleep schedule. Yes. Yeah. How many of us struggle with good sleep, though? I find that it's not just about scheduling sleep, it's also about sleep hygiene. All right, my next question here is doing something for me. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like a lot of times we can kind of put ourselves on the back burner, right? We can kind of view us as the last priority when, you know, we don't have much to give if we're not prioritizing actually taking care of ourselves too. Yeah. My next question is up on the slide here. On a scale of 1 to 10, where would you put yourself right now? With 1 being I'm not doing anything to take care of myself and I'm really having trouble, and 10 being I couldn't do any more to take care of myself and I'm doing fantastic. A lot of mid-range, right? We're surviving. That's about where we are. Yep. Yeah. So wherever you are right now, whatever number you're at right now, I want you to answer this question quickly to yourself. Summer bumps you up to a 2. Eric, oh my gosh, we need to take care of you. 2 is very low. Oh, up from a 2, up 2 from general. Oh, okay. Okay, that's better. Okay. Summer is great. Yeah. So I want you all to think about whatever number it was that you picked right now. What is one thing that would make it jump up, even just a single number? Eric says summer brings him up 2, but what is one thing that you could do within the next 30 days to bring it up at least 1 number? Sleep and socialize, great. Yeah, walking and exercising, yeah. Oh man, massages would be great. Yeah, I am seeing so much sleep in here. Yeah, organization, definitely. I don't know if it's just me, but you can tell how busy and stressed I am by the amount of clutter on my desk at work. If it is neat and organized, you know that things are really going well for me. And if it's got 100 things on it, you know that my life is a little chaotic right now. So yeah, organizing can definitely be helpful. Yeah, awesome. Hold on, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing again.